I never thought I'd see a man kill over a sandwich. For 7 years, I ran a Popeyes in New Orleans. It wasn't glamorous. Hell, it was far from it. But it paid the bills. I knew every corner of that place. The sound the fryers made when the oil was getting too old, the way the back door would always stick when it rained, the exact amount of sass to dish out to a customer before they started demanding a manager, which, unfortunately, was me. I'd seen some wild stuff. Drunk college kids trying to fry their own chicken at 3 a.m., a woman stuffing biscuits into her purse like they were gold bars, and even a guy who brought in a live rooster, claiming it was his service animal. But none of that compared to what happened one night. It started like any other shift. I was in the office, finishing up paperwork, when my phone buzzed. A text from corporate. I opened it. An invitation, no, an order, to attend a confidential product tasting at 4 a.m. Attendance is mandatory. Location, your store. I frowned. They didn't usually involve restaurant managers in product development. That was corporate's business. But the message came from someone high up, so I didn't ask questions. At 3:45 a.m., 5 of us gathered in the back. Me, 3 other Popeyes managers from nearby locations, and a guy named Richard, a regional supervisor I'd met only once before. Then there was him, a short, balding man in a gray suit. His eyes had that cold, clinical look of someone who wasn't fazed by anything. A metal briefcase sat on the table in front of him. "My name is Mr. Keller," he said, adjusting his tie. "That's not my real name, but for this meeting you can call me that." He pulled out a stack of papers and slid them across the table. Non-disclosure agreements. "This meeting is highly confidential," he continued. "By signing, you agree not to discuss anything you see, hear, or taste tonight." The other managers laughed, but I didn't. Something about the way he spoke gave me a chill. We signed. Keller unlocked the briefcase, pulled out a laptop, and set it down. "I want to show you a test video before we begin," he said. "This will help you understand what you're about to experience." He clicked play. The footage was grainy, like security camera footage. It showed a group of test subjects, maybe 10 or 12 people, sitting in a sterile conference room. Each had a burger in front of them, wrapped in paper stamped with the Popeyes logo. They ate like normal at first, but then things got weird. One man took a bite, and his eyes rolled back in his head. He gripped the table like he was fighting, off a high. Next to him, a woman started shaking violently. She fell out of her chair, convulsing. Someone else started laughing, loud, manic laughter, and began slamming their fist against the table. Then all hell broke loose. One man grabbed another's burger and bit his hand when the guy tried to take it back. A woman lunged across the table, screaming. The last thing the camera caught was someone throwing a chair at the lens. Then the screen went black. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "What the hell did we just watch?" Rodney, one of the other managers, asked. "That was an early test batch," Keller said, closing the laptop. "We've made improvements." He reached into the briefcase and pulled out 5 black boxes, setting one in front of each of us. "This," he said, "is the future of Popeyes." I opened my box. Inside was a burger, thick with a perfectly golden bun, cheese melted just right, sauce glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Is this beef?" I asked. "Legally, no," Keller replied. "What the hell does that mean?" Rodney demanded. "It's lab-grown," Keller said without missing a beat. "Is it vegetarian?" "Legally, also no." I stared at him. "Just eat it," Keller said, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. I hesitated, but then the smell hit me. Something in my brain flipped off, and before I knew it, I was taking a bite. And for a moment, nothing else mattered. It was perfect. The meat, the seasoning, the sauce. It was like every craving I'd ever had been wrapped up in a single bite. And then, just like that, everything went dark. If you could call it that. The taste was impossibly rich, smoky, indescribable. The pickles were crisp, the onions sharp, and the sauce was warm, slightly sweet. Every single element hit my taste buds like an orchestra playing in perfect harmony. I took another bite, Then another, and before I knew it, it was gone. The room was silent. I looked up. The others were staring at their empty boxes, their fingers twitching like they were reaching for something that wasn't there. Keller pulled a stopwatch from his pocket and clicked it. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Rodney licked his fingers. Slowly, like he hadn't even realized he was doing it. Then, without warning, he lunged across the table, grabbing for someone else's box. "Give me yours, Catherine," he rasped. Catherine, the only woman in the group, slapped his hand away and shoved her fingers into her box, scraping out the last of the sauce with her nails. "Hey, hey!" I stood up, my pulse pounding. "What the hell is wrong with you guys?" Rodney turned to me, his eyes bloodshot, pupils huge. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "There's sauce on your hand," he said, his lips curling in something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so wild. I looked down. There was just a tiny drop. Before I could react, Rodney grabbed my wrist and bit me, hard. I screamed, and that's when everything fell apart. Someone knocked over the table. Papers flew everywhere. Rodney tackled me, his fingers clawing at my skin. Someone else's hands were around my throat. I couldn't breathe. My body was shaking, fighting, but my mind was going fuzzy. I think I was screaming, but the sound felt distant, like I was underwater. Then everything went black. The last thing I saw was Keller, calm as ever, reaching into his briefcase and pulling out a gas mask. He pressed a button, and a thick white gas filled the room. I couldn't fight it. I couldn't even breathe. When I woke up, I was back in my chair. My mouth was dry. My head pounded like someone had driven a nail through it. Keller was walking around, smiling, with a first aid kit in one hand and bottles of water in the other. "Welcome back," he said, his voice smooth, almost comforting. I stared at him, my hands shaking. "What the hell was that?" Rodney croaked from across the table, his swollen lip barely able to form words. That's the future of fast food?" I looked at Keller, eyes wide, heart hammering. "You can't serve that to people. People will kill for that." Keller just smiled. "That's business," he said, his voice dripping with something cold. He locked the briefcase and patted it gently, like it was some prized possession. "We still have a few adjustments to make," he admitted, almost casually. "But once we figure out how to extend the cravings, well," he glanced at me, his eyes narrowing, "you'll be the first to know." I looked down at the bite mark on my hand. The skin was red and swollen, but I could still feel it, still taste it. That damn burger. I didn't know how, but I could still taste it, like it was in my veins. I don't know when it's coming. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after. That. But one day Popeyes will release a new burger and you'll be addicted. I never liked closing shifts. They always dragged on, stretching time like the hours didn't know how to behave. Maybe it was the silence that came after the chaos, after a place designed for noise and movement was emptied out. That night felt like any other. I was behind the counter, watching the last minutes crawl by. The fryers were off, the kitchen had been scrubbed down, and the lingering smell of grease and salt was still thick in the air. Alina was wiping down the tables in slow, tired motions, like she was done, and just waiting for someone to call it a night. In the back, I could hear Chris mumbling curses to himself, probably pissed off over some kitchen mishap. We were ready to lock up, ready to step out of this place and get a few hours to ourselves before doing it all again. Then, the door slid open. That sound, the soft metallic glide of the automatic doors, was nothing new. It was part of the routine, part of the quiet shuffle of a late-night shift. But at that hour, with everything winding down, it felt wrong. My stomach turned. A man stepped inside. He moved slow, deliberate, like he wasn't sure what he was doing, but he was doing it anyway. His head was down, the hood of his dark sweatshirt casting a shadow over his face. His clothes were loose, nondescript, but there was something about him that made my skin crawl. Still, I forced myself to breathe, to keep calm. "Hey, we're about to close," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I made it polite but firm. He didn't respond, just stood there, motionless. His presence felt like it filled up more space than it should have. The stillness of him, the way his body held a certain tension, spooked me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, he looked up. Our eyes met, and there was something in his gaze that sent a chill through me. Impatience, sure, but something else, too, something darker. My body stiffened before I even understood why. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. My fingers twitched on the counter, betraying my nerves. Nothing. He just stood there, staring at me. The quiet stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, his hand slipped under his jacket. A glint of metal caught my eye. A gun. Time seemed to slow down, like the world was pressing pause. My breath hitched, and every muscle in my body locked up. "Empty the register." His voice was calm, controlled. No anger, no rush, just cold. I couldn't move. My mind was stuck, caught between the reality of what was happening and the surreal, feeling that I was watching it unfold from a distance. Then came the bang, not the gunshot. The barrel of the gun struck the side of the register with a sickening clang, snapping me back into my body. My hands were shaking, but I said nothing. "Empty it," he repeated, his voice sharper this time. I fumbled, my fingers slipping on the cold metal register. The drawer popped open with a metallic chime, the sound too loud, too bright in the silence. It made me shiver. I grabbed the bills, my hands trembling, and shoved them into the clear plastic bag he'd tossed onto the counter. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Alina. She was frozen, standing at the back of the restaurant. A dirty rag was still in her hands, her eyes wide, locked onto mine, silently pleading for me to make this stop. Was Chris still in the kitchen? Did he know what was happening? Could he hear us? The man's gaze never left me. His hand gripped, the gun tight, his finger resting just above the trigger. I forced myself to breathe, to keep moving, to make it look like I wasn't as terrified as I felt. I kept thinking, if I just did everything right, if I didn't panic, maybe he'd take the money and leave. I finished stuffing the bag and slid it across the counter. He snatched it with one hand, still holding the gun with the other. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there staring at me. For a second his lips twitched like he was trying to smile but couldn't quite pull it off. "Don't do anything stupid," he warned, his voice low, quieter now. Then he turned and walked toward the door. I let out the breath I'd been holding, my knees feeling weak beneath me. It was over, or so I thought. As he reached the door, something caught my eye. A small detail, insignificant on its own, but it lodged itself into my mind like a splinter I couldn't get out. In the back pocket of his jeans, a phone. Black and white case. He disappeared into the night, and the door slid shut behind him. The door slid shut behind him, and suddenly, the silence in the restaurant felt suffocating. Alina darted to the back, her footsteps frantic, and I heard the muffled sound of her voice calling someone, her tone sharp, panicked. But I couldn't move. My legs were trembling too much, my hands still frozen in the same position they'd been when I handed over the money. I wasn't okay. The fear didn't leave when he did. It clung to the air, to the walls, to the corners of the restaurant. The hum of the appliances felt like it was pulling me into the shadows, like every sound was creeping closer, and every shadow seemed deeper. My eyes stayed fixed on the door. What if he came back? What if he never really left? The police arrived quickly, but time had already started to warp. Seconds stretched into minutes, and minutes felt heavier, like they carried the weight of the entire night. My breathing was shallow, my fingers still curled into my palms. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was too quiet, too still. Then the officers came in, two of them breaking the spell of the suffocating silence. One was a woman, her eyes sharp and her posture stiff. She approached the counter. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded automatically, but the words, caught in my throat. I wasn't okay. My heart was still racing, my skin felt too tight, and I could still see his eyes. The way they locked onto mine, like he was trying to find something. Chris finally came out from the back, his face tight with tension. What the hell happened? He had a gun, Alina whispered, barely above a breath, as if saying it out. Loud would make it real. I forced myself to speak. He made me empty the register. My voice felt foreign, like it wasn't mine. Then he left, walked right out the door. The officers exchanged looks. Then one of them turned toward the security cameras. Do you have footage? Chris nodded, leading them to the small office in the back. I stood there, frozen, my eyes locked onto the counter. The cash register still sat open, its drawer gaping like an empty mouth gasping for air. Then I remembered the phone. My stomach twisted. It was a stupid detail, meaningless on its own, but it lodged itself into my mind like a splinter. Something about it felt off. A few minutes later, one of the officers came back, his face more serious than before. Security footage confirms what you said, he told me. The guy kept his head down the whole time, hoodie covering most of his face, hard to make out his features. He paused, then looked at me closely. But you said something about a phone. I swallowed hard. Yeah, in his back pocket, black and white case. The officer froze for a second, then nodded slowly. You sure about that? Yes, I said, my voice steady despite the creeping panic. The image of that phone, the black and white case, was burned into my mind. It was one of the only things I could clearly remember from that night. The officer nodded again, speaking quietly into his radio as he stepped away. Alina moved beside me, her voice still shaky. What does that mean? She asked. I didn't know. But something in the officer's face told me that this wasn't just a random robbery anymore. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Saw the gun. Saw the register. Saw the way he stared at me like he was deciding something. By morning, it all felt like a fever dream. The police had taken our statements, reviewed the footage, and promised to follow up, but none of it felt real. None of it felt like enough. I was still shaken when I arrived at work the next evening. The restaurant felt different, heavier. Alina and Chris were already inside, their faces drawn with exhaustion. They caught him, Chris said as soon as I walked in. I stopped cold. The guy? They found him, Alina muttered, not looking at me, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. They tracked his phone, Chris added, his voice tight. My blood ran cold. The phone? Chris nodded. The cops didn't get a good look at his face, but they traced the phone. Turns out it was already flagged in some other case. Alina shuddered. They found him in some abandoned house across town. Said he didn't even try to run when they got there. I didn't know what to say. Chris hesitated, then added, and there's something else. Something weird. My pulse quickened. What? They found cash on him, Chris said, his expression darkening. The same amount he took from the register. I froze, a cold shiver running down my spine. But, Chris's voice dropped lower. But he didn't spend any of it. It was still in the same bag. I couldn't breathe for a second. Why would someone rob a place, take the money, and then just keep it? Something about it didn't feel right. Something about it felt wrong, and for the first time since that night I realized something. Maybe it wasn't just about the money. Maybe, just maybe, he was looking for something else, or someone. I never thought something so small could turn deadly. It was a Saturday night, and Popeyes was chaos. The air was thick with the smell of fried chicken, grease, and desperation. Customers barked out orders, kids screamed over each other, and the fryers wouldn't stop their damn beeping. The floor, slick with oil, squeaked under every rushed step. The drive-thru line curled out into the street like a waiting snake. Inside we were drowning, throwing chicken into baskets, sliding trays across the counter, shouting over one another for more biscuits. I was stuck at the register, forehead damp with sweat under the two bright fluorescent lights, trying not to lose my mind. Hungry people are mean. Mix up a spicy for a mild, forget a sauce packet, hand over slaw instead of mashed potatoes. Suddenly you're the devil himself. We dealt with it every shift. But that night wasn't just another mistake. He walked in just before 8:30 p.m., mid-30s, broad-shouldered, rough around the edges, the kind of guy you'd clock in a crowd and keep your distance from. Beard scraggly, like he hadn't touched it in weeks. Travis Green. Regular. Always ordered the same. Spicy chicken sandwich, large fries, Dr. Pepper. Usually quiet. Polite even. Barely a grunt when he picked up his food. But tonight, he was off, pacing by the pickup counter like a caged dog, sighing, loud enough to cut through the noise. Eyes locked on his phone, thumb tapping like he was punching through the glass, jaw tight, teeth grinding, muttering. Unbelievable. Can't even get a damn sandwich right. Thing is, his order had only been up for 5 minutes. Danny, my coworker, 20 years old, college kid, too kind for this job, was manning the pickup counter. Always wore a smile, even when he shouldn't. He called out, "Spicy chicken sandwich for Travis." Travis stomped up, yanked the bag from Danny's hand, and ripped it open right there. His face went dark, his brow furrowed, and he glared down at the sandwich like it had insulted him personally. "This ain't spicy," he muttered, voice low and flat. "This ain't what I ordered." Danny offered his usual calm smile. "Sorry about that, man. Let me fix it up for you real quick." He turned to grab a fresh sandwich, but Travis wasn't done. "This is ridiculous," he growled, slamming the bag down on the counter, chicken flying out the side. "I come here every damn week and y'all still can't get it right." I glanced up from the register. The air shifted, conversations stopped, heads turned. The place got quieter, like the whole building was holding its breath. Danny didn't flinch. "I hear you, sir. Let me take care of that." But then some dude in line, some tired guy who just wanted his chicken, muttered, "Man, it's just a sandwich." That was it. Travis spun like he'd been slapped, locked eyes with the guy. "You think this is funny?" His voice cracked like a whip, loud and sharp. The customer held up both hands, backing away. "Hey man, relax. We've all been waiting here forever." No, y'all think I'm the problem now?" Travis barked, stepping forward. "Now I'm the crazy one?" Danny slid the new sandwich onto the counter. "Here you go, sir. Spicy, just like you ordered. Again, sorry for the mix-up." For a second, it looked like that was the end of it. Travis grabbed the bag, but he didn't leave. He slammed his fist down hard on the counter. The napkin dispenser jumped. "Not good enough," he snarled. "I want my money back." Danny froze. "Sir, I said," Travis growled, leaning in. "Give me my money back." His hand slipped into his jacket, and that's when my stomach dropped. My fingers clenched the edge of the register. Everything slowed. The buzz of the lights faded. The world shrank to the shape of his hand. "Danny, get back!" I shouted, but it was too late. Travis pulled out a gun. Screams tore through the restaurant. Trays hit the floor. People ducked, ran, knocked over chairs in a frenzy. Someone fell. Someone else cried out. My heart thudded so loud it felt like it would break through my ribs, and all I could think was, all this over a sandwich. I tried to run. I really did. But my knees locked and my brain just blanked. Instinct kicked in before thought. I hit the floor, palms slapping hard against the greasy tile. Danny didn't move, just stood there, hands raised, eyes wide and locked onto Travis. "Sir, please," he said, his voice cracking like he was trying to hold back a scream. "Let's just talk." Travis wasn't hearing him. His face was beet red, twisted like he was fighting back tears, or something worse. The gun trembled, in his hands, finger twitching near the trigger. "Y'all think this is funny?" he barked. "Y'all want to mess with me? Treat me like I'm nothing?" Danny inched back. "No one's messing with you, man. Just put the gun down. We can fix this, all right?" You're not a joke, but Travis's eyes were glassy, far away. And then, bang, the sound split the room. A brutal, deafening crack that seemed to rip the air in half. Danny dropped like a puppet whose strings had been cut. His body hit the floor with a dull, wet thud. I screamed. Someone else did too, high and sharp and full of horror. Travis stood there, chest heaving, wild-eyed and panting like an animal cornered in a cage. He didn't run, didn't flinch, just stood with the gun dangling in his hand, shaking. Danny wasn't moving. I crawled toward him, legs barely working, my hand sliding through the slippery grime on the floor. No, 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 no. I whispered over and over, like if I said it enough, it'd undo everything. Blood. So much of it, thick and warm and spreading out beneath him like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Danny, hey, stay with me, I begged, pressing both hands to his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to keep him anchored here. Help's coming, okay? Just hold on, please. His lips parted like he was trying to speak, but no words came out. His eyes fluttered, then stilled, and just like that, he was gone. The sirens were just background noise at first. Distant, echoey, then louder. Red and blue lights washed across the windows like lightning in a storm. The police burst through the doors, guns drawn, shouting commands I could barely process. Drop the weapon. Now! Hands where we can see him. They swarmed Travis, dragged him to the ground, cuffed him like he was nothing. Just another arrest. He didn't resist. The rest? A blur. Paramedics storming in. People crying outside. My manager pale and shaking as he answered questions, his words barely making sense. I stayed where I was, hands soaked in blood, knees frozen. To the sticky floor, over a sandwich. Danny died over a damn sandwich. That night, it never left me. Still hasn't. It wasn't about the food, not really. It was about the spark, the anger, how fast it can spread, how quick something tiny, stupid, forgettable can twist into something fatal. The restaurant reopened a week later. People came back like nothing happened, ordered combos, laughed, snapped photos of their meals like it was just another Tuesday. But I never went back. Couldn't. Every time a tray hit the floor, I heard the shot. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Danny's face, mouth trying to form one last word. Every time I passed a Popeyes, my chest tightened like I was back there, crouched, on the floor drowning in panic and blood, all because someone wanted extra heat. I never looked at Popeyes the same after that night. Never thought a missing side of fries could almost get me killed. Working there wasn't exactly a dream job, but it paid the bills. I'd been at that Popeyes off I-45 for almost 3 years. Long enough to see every flavor of crazy. Customers yelling about soggy fries, cursing us out over a missing biscuit, threatening to call corporate because their combo wasn't hot enough. I'd learned to smile through it all, let the anger roll off me like grease on the floor, but her? She wasn't like the others. It was a Friday night, just past 8. The dinner rush was winding down, and the place smelled like fryer oil and sweat. I was up front, handing out orders, calling names over the buzz of the soda machine. The air was sticky. I just wanted to get through my shift, go home, and knock back a cold beer. Then she walked in. Tall, real thin, wearing this oversized brown jacket that didn't make a lick of sense in the Houston heat. Her face was blank, eyes darting around like she was scanning for exits or witnesses. Something about her made the hairs on my arms stand up. Not fear, not exactly. More like my gut whispering trouble. "Welcome to Popeyes," I said, doing my best customer voice. "What can I get started for you tonight?" She rattled off this huge order: family meal, extra biscuits, large mashed red beans, sandwiches, sweet teas, the works. Way too much for one person. She handed me a fistful of damp, crumpled bills without saying a word, just stared at me while I counted. No thank you. No smile. Just stillness. She moved to the pickup counter, arms tight to her sides, eyes locked. On the kitchen like she was waiting for something to explode. The air shifted. You ever feel that? Like the room tilts a little, just enough to know something's about to go wrong. 10 minutes later, she was back. Didn't speak at first. Just slammed the food bag onto the counter. Bam! Hard enough to rattle the napkin dispenser. I paid for this damn food and y'all messed it up, she said, voice sharp and loud enough to turn heads. A man 2 tables over paused mid-bite. A kid stopped scrolling TikTok. I took a slow breath. I'm real sorry about that, ma'am, I said. Let me take a look. I opened the bag, knew what I'd find even before I saw it. No fries, no 6-piece nuggets. A dumb, fixable mistake. I'll grab those for you right now, I said, already reaching for the warmer. But she didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there breathing shallow, hands gripping the counter like she was holding herself down. You think this is funny? She asked, barely above a whisper. That voice, low and strained, sent ice down my spine. No, ma'am, I said carefully. Just want to make it right. She leaned in close, breath sour like old coffee and cigarettes. Fix it, she hissed. That's when I noticed her right hand twitch under her jacket sleeve. And then I saw it. A knife. Long, narrow, tucked just out of view. The light from the heat lamps caught the blade for half a second. My throat went dry. My fingers started shaking as I reached for the fries and nuggets, packed them into a fresh bag as slowly and calmly as I could. Here you go, ma'am, I said, voice barely steady. I'm really sorry about the mistake. She didn't take the bag, just stood there. And I realized nobody else had seen it. Customers were still eating. The fryer beeped in the back. Marcus was stocking cups, clueless. I was completely, terrifyingly alone. She tilted her head, eyes drilling into mine. You think I'm stupid? She hissed. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My tongue felt thick. My brain, blank. She stepped closer. Too close. You think I'm just gonna take this? She said, holding up the bag like it was poison, and walk the hell out. Then she laughed, sharp and dry, like it hurt her to do it. Her hand clenched tighter around the knife under her sleeve. Nah, she muttered. Y'all don't get to mess with me and walk away. My chest squeezed. I wanted to scream, shout, for Marcus, but nothing moved. My voice was stuck in the back of my throat like a swallowed stone. I took a slow step backward, foot sliding on the greasy tile. Behind me, the soda machine. To my left, the fry station, boxes of salt, hot oil, nowhere to run. She had me cornered. You don't have to do this, I managed, my voice cracking like a dry twig. That grin came back, stretched wide, full of teeth. Too many teeth, it felt like. She looked less like a person and more like something wearing a person's face. Oh, but I do, she whispered, her voice almost sweet. Nobody messes with me. Not without paying. She lifted the knife just enough for the light to catch it, a thin silver glint. She spun it once between her fingers like she'd done it before. My breath came in short, ragged pulls. I tried to think. If I moved too fast, she'd stab. If I froze, she still might. Either way, I was seconds from bleeding. She stepped in again, closer. Then, sirens. That distant wail sliced through the silence, and red and blue lights spilled across the restaurant floor like paint. They flashed across her face, across mine, against the stainless steel counters. Her eyes flicked to the front door. Her jaw clenched. The knife twitched. For a second, I thought she might bolt. Instead, she lunged. The blade came fast, straight for my gut. I ducked instinctively, heard the air whistle past my ear. She slammed into the counter, knocked over a stack of trays. I scrambled back, legs nearly giving out under me. I slipped, caught myself, heart hammering against my ribs. Before she could turn, the front doors burst open. Drop it! Someone screamed. Cops, guns drawn. Chaos erupted. She screamed, shrill, furious, as she swung the blade in wild arcs. Tables scraped. People shouted. A baby cried. It took 3 officers to pin her. She kicked, screamed, cursed in a voice that didn't sound human. The knife clattered onto the floor, bouncing once before spinning to a stop near the register. And just like that, it was over. I collapsed against the counter, legs jelly, arms shaking so bad I thought I might faint. Marcus finally looked up, wide-eyed and pale. "Yo, you good? What the hell just happened?" I couldn't speak, couldn't even nod. The woman was still yelling as they dragged her out, her voice ragged and raw. The knife lay in a puddle of grease, the blade glistening with oil, and something darker. I don't know how long I stared at it. Felt like hours. The cops told us later someone had called from the parking lot, said she was acting weird, talking to herself, pacing like a caged dog. She had a record. Assault, weapons charges, probation violations. She wasn't just some pissed-off customer. She was a storm looking for a place to hit. If the cops had come 30 seconds later. I don't like to think about that. I still work at Popeyes. Gotta eat. Rent's due on the 1st, whether you almost die or not. But now, every time a customer raises their voice or glares too long over a wrong order, I feel my pulse spike. Just a bit. Because now I know, sometimes it ain't just about fries. Sometimes it's something else. Something a hell of a lot worse. I never thought a part-time job at Popeyes would mess me up like this. It was just supposed to be a way to scrape by, minimum wage, free shift meals, nothing glamorous. Last winter, I started at a Popeyes out by the highway, one of those spots that always smells like fryer oil and despair. It wasn't my dream gig. I was juggling college, bills, and a broken-down car, but it paid, and that was enough. The daytime shifts were fine. Loud, chaotic, full of families with screaming kids and truckers barking orders over the counter. But nights were different, quieter, colder. The place would empty out around 10, and the silence would settle in like a fog. The overhead, fluorescents flickered with this annoying buzz, and the wind outside howled like it had teeth. Still, I chalked it up to nerves. Just another shift, just another paycheck. Then came that night in January, the one that still creeps into my dreams. Liz was working with me. She was sweet, real soft-spoken. A psych major like me, always humming old R&B songs under her breath while she cleaned. We'd started around the same time and usually closed together. That night, though, around 10:30, she looked pale and sweaty, leaning against the counter like the whole room was spinning. "I don't feel right," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "Like I think I'm gonna pass out." I looked around. The place was dead. Last customers had cleared out 20 minutes ago. All that was left was cleanup. "Go home," I told her, grabbing a rag. "I've got this. Just rest." She hesitated. "I don't think we're supposed to close solo." "I'll be fine. Seriously, get some sleep." She smiled weakly, shrugged on her hoodie, and left. I locked the front door behind her, the click of the bolt sounding louder than it should have, with the main lights off and just the emergency. One's glowing faint yellow, I hooked up my Bluetooth speaker and let some Zeppelin fill the quiet. Anything to make the silence feel less suffocating. I started cleaning, mopping floors, wiping tables, resetting the soda machine. The usual. Then I heard it, a slow, dragging scrape from the back kitchen. I froze. The mop stopped mid-swipe. "Liz?" I called, even though I'd just watched her drive off. No answer. Just the buzz of the lights and the soft strum of Ramble On, gripping the mop like a bat. I stepped into the kitchen. It looked normal, at first. But one of the flour bags had burst open, powder dusting the floor like snow. I'd cleaned that area already. It shouldn't have been touched. Then I heard breathing. A long, raspy exhale. I spun around. There, in the dining area, was a man. Just standing there, staring. I nearly screamed. He looked like a cursed version of the Popeye mascot. Same sailor hat, but soaked and yellowed with grime. His face was leathery, beard scraggly, and he wore this stained tank top that looked like it hadn't seen water in years. A corncob pipe hung from his lips, though there was no smoke. One eye was half shut. The other bored into mine. "You alone?" he rasped. My throat went dry. No. My manager's in the back," I lied, voice cracking. He smiled. It was slow. Wrong. Like he'd heard that lie before and liked it anyway. "Didn't see nobody else leave," he said, voice low and wet-sounding. "Pretty sure it's just you." I took a step back, heart thudding against my ribs, still clutched the mop like it'd actually help. "We're closed," I said. "You gotta leave now." But he didn't move, just tilted his head and mumbled, "Something strange." "You know I only eat spinach." I blinked, confused. "What?" That's when he started walking toward me. "I don't understand," I stammered. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Meat eaters," he hissed. "You enjoy silencing helpless birds, don't you?" My stomach nodded. "Look, man, if you've got a problem, take it up with corporate. I just work here." His smile twitched wider, off-kilter, like something broken trying to imitate human expression. No, the manager won't understand. I need you to hear the message." The way he said it, too calm, too sure, sent a sharp chill crawling down my spine. "What message?" I whispered. He took another step. "Maybe if I do to you what your manager does to those chickens." His voice cracked with something like glee. "Maybe then people will finally understand." And then he lunged. I didn't think. I ran, sprinted past the fryers and slipped into the restroom, slamming the door and turning the lock just as he slammed into it. Bang! The impact rattled the door on its hinges. "Open up!" he roared, his voice slurred and full of rage. "It's Popeye the Sailor Man!" I pressed my back against the sink, chest heaving, sweat slick on my skin. My phone. It was still out on the damn front counter. No way to call for help. Another kick, thud. "Don't try my patience, lady," he growled. "The longer you make me wait, the more damage I'll do when I get in." I squeezed my eyes shut. Think. The vent. There was a narrow air vent up near the ceiling, usually useless, but maybe, I wasn't big, maybe I could fit. Heart pounding, I climbed onto the toilet, fingers scraping for grip on the cold metal. My sneakers kept slipping, but I pushed, harder, forcing my body into the cramped duct. Then, the door burst open, so the little birdie tries to fly. A rough hand clamped around my ankle. I screamed, kicking, thrashing, panic like electricity in my limbs. My heel connected, hard, with something soft and wet. His eye. "Ah!" he howled, stumbling back. I didn't wait. I scrambled through the vent and dropped out the other end, landing hard on the pavement behind the store. My scooter, blessed, beat-up, ancient thing, was parked a few feet away. Fumbling with the keys, hands shaking uncontrollably, I jammed one into the ignition. The engine coughed, once, twice, refused to turn. Come on. Then I saw him, staggering out of the back door, one eye clutched in his palm, the other burning with fury. "I'll find you," he snarled, limping forward. "Meat eater." The scooter roared to life. I peeled off into the night, tears streaming down my face, adrenaline screaming through my veins. I didn't even wait for morning. Called my manager from a friend's couch and told her I quit. Didn't care about the paycheck. Didn't want my uniform. Nothing. I begged Liz to quit too. She said she'd think about it. Now, I barely leave my apartment. I work online, get groceries delivered, haven't touched fast food in months. Because sometimes, when I walk by a dark alley or hear a noise outside my window, I feel him, waiting. And when I sleep, which isn't often, I hear his voice behind my eyelids. "I only eat spinach.